All right. Hola, amigos. Welcome, everyone, for the Celestial Theodolite number 6 update. Today, we're just going to be doing a brief update on celestial refraction. That was a subject of contention last week or the week previous. We covered the introduction to, or Jesse introduced his simulator for refraction and all that. I haven't got a chance to look at that personally yet, but a couple of the boys have. We'll touch on that at the end. And then, but primarily, we're going to go over celestial refraction and the idea of an observer being located where he is not, right? Remember when the celestial theodolite first came out, a big point of contention was, why are you moving the observer to where he isn't, and all these things, right? And we were like, no, it's a misunderstanding where when the thing isn't visible, geometrically, the timing, all this stuff, right? So we were trying to like narrow that down. But the biggest point of contention, right, was why are you moving the observer where he isn't? Oh boy. Are we going to learn about moving the observer to where he isn't when we get into celestial navigation here in the ASI grid and all that in a presentation tomorrow, which will then be done again here at a later date. But moving forward, we're going to have a strict distinction between these models here, between concave, between the stereographic sun or star setting into the ground model, flat Earth model, the AE projection, all these models that depend on the apparent positions of the celestial bodies. We're going to get heavy into that, especially if everyone's all upset about the observer being where he isn't. Well, that's the backbone of the entire Glob model, is moving the observer to where he isn't. That's how you use this coordinate system here, is you move the observer to where he isn't. So we will briefly cover that as we get into the refraction aspect of it. YouTube has no sound. All right, 1 second. That's unfortunate. Testing, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2. They got it. All right, we're good. And we're back. Okay, so they missed the whole intro. It's a shame. But to recap really quickly, we're about to cover celestial navigation and how to use the latitude-longitude system and how it moves the observer to where he isn't, which we'll get into more detail tomorrow, but this is a broad overview to get us into the celestial refraction correction, which is absolutely necessary to use this coordinate system. So to start us off here, we have the conception of an observer in the center of a sphere, a hollow sphere with celestial bodies fixed to it on the inside, rotating about an axis. And we have a fundamental plane here for the observer. So the way that they describe how you perceive the heavens and the ground is through three coordinate systems that describe the horizon, which consists of the geoidal horizon, the sensible horizon, and some other one. But anyway, they all intersect and are planar. And then we have the celestial horizon, which is where an observer is and how far he can see the sky, which the way that they conceptualize it would be if you were standing at the North Pole, you could see all the way down to the equator. So the celestial sphere consists of coplanar horizons, one the celestial horizon and one the geoidal horizon and or sensible horizon, the visible horizon, which you see, right? All of these are coplanar together. And what they end up doing is they, through transformation processing and referencing the stars, a snapshot of the stars at a position where they're not, we move the observer to the center of the Earth, and then through either dip corrections or refraction corrections or parallax corrections, we move celestial bodies, we change their elevation such to make it all an equidistant web through these corrections, taking the geocentric position, they call it. So when you're making an observation, right, when you're in this scenario, when you're an observer here looking up at the stars, this is a topocentric observation, right? This is your quote unquote raw observation where you're looking at the apparent position. Now you need to convert this into a geocentric position, which is at the center of the Earth, looking straight up at your zenith as if there's no refraction, and you're looking up. So you're changing everything to be at the center of the ball, and then you're looking up at 3959 because as far as you can see is from the north to the equator. So all you're doing here is putting yourself in the center of a celestial sphere, and then saying that you're also standing on it rather than, having it move relative to you. So that whole process involves, like I said, a series of transformations and corrections here. But the biggest one primarily that we're going to be concerned with to start off with is our dip correction. So suppose you're in an airplane or you're on a boat, you're on a yacht or something, right? You're not quite on the ground, right? So you can apply this dip correction, which gives you a coefficient here that you multiply by the square of your observer height in meters or feet, and the corresponding coefficient will output whatever correction needs to be made to make it so that you're on a sphere of 3959 and this is your horizon. And then you could also, actually that's for a different correction. So anyway, once we get our flat baseline, once we've established our coplanar baseline, which is the horizon, which is coplanar to the celestial horizon, we do atmospheric refraction correction, which consists of how we're going to apply celestial refraction. And we can incorporate, there's a term in here, actually not in this one, it's in the following equation, the other equation on the other page, but there's a term in there where you can adjust your actual atmosphere and temperature variables if you need to. And then the rest of it will output a series our coefficients that will basically move the position of the star such that if you were standing at the center of the earth, like on a marble, like at the smallest point possible that you could stand on at the very center of the earth, and you had a mathematical formula that would describe an atmosphere that extends radially outward from that center point as a smooth gradient up to 20 kilometers. And then the last the last 10 kilometers of that 20 isn't really relevant because that's where it fades off into space. There's nothing there, blah, blah, blah. But the 10 kilometers down to the surface of that 3959 is where you get this smooth homogeneous gradient that is calculated, that is distributed over a sphere of a radius 3959. So this is like the baseline correction that you get. And then you could add in your adjustable, your actual temperature and pressure, right? And this will give you where the star needs to be. So based off of where you're not, right? This is all based off, all these corrections, right, are all moving the apparent position of the star that you see to another apparent position as if you were standing at the center of the ball looking up with no refraction. And then they take that position and reference it against another point in time, which isn't dubious. That part's not dubious. But this whole going to a position where it isn't to make references is preposterous. This is why a quote unquote works on a globe. This is where they're not even referencing the stars where they see them, which is an apparent position anyway. But they're actually presuming that they're viewing them from another location to make them fit so that the coordinate system is useful, because like I said, it's a snapshot of the position of the stars in the sky. So after all these calculations and corrections, right, then we're on the globe and we can start doing our celestial navigation and using the lat long, all these things. But the primary feature here, the parallax and semi-diameter corrections, which aren't relevant to what we're talking about now specifically, because these are only applied to the moon and sun. But this is another instance where they take these two celestial bodies and they have a way to move them to the center of the Earth too, so that they could set everything up at this equidistant web using a ratio of Earth's radius and the assumed radius of the moon. Which, when you get into how that was derived, it's all just an apparent radius based off of the angular size, which is all we've ever had. So you could have this, as long as if the distance changes, the radius changes. So you could have these scale proportional and everything would still work out exactly as is and nothing would matter. You would never know. But they are tied into these values here, and this is what they're using from the coordinate system. This is what they've asserted the correctness of. And this is what capitulates to the values given based on the radius, based on the angular size that we see, so that it's all backwards derivable. And as you can see here from doing distances to the sun, well, if the distance changes, then the radius would also change. They're not showing the radius change here of what this would be to the corresponding distance change. But whenever you see all these different distances, this means that the radius changes, so the size of the sun's different. But the size is the same angular size, so how could these all be right for a period of time and also wrong? Who knows? 'Tis a mystery. All right, now we will get into the refraction aspect of it. Okay, so we covered the terrestrial refraction and the celestial refraction aspects of it, which come from these equations here. So one was given by Smart's formula, which I think that's the one that Jesse's using for his simulator. And then there's also one by G.G. Bennett, who has his own. And then there's a supplement that you could add to. There's a term you can add to that to make it more accurate, because apparently it's like an average generalized. It's good enough for some purposes, but if you need a more accurate version of it, you can add an improved term to the. Oh, there it is, the improved term here. So you can just adjust these bad boys however much you need to for celestial refraction. So our premise, right, the purpose of the celestial theodolite, why this is such an impactful thing, is because we're not referencing what we see in the sky as the apparent position. We're not moving our position to the center of anything or any craziness like that. What we're doing is very simple. How did I close it? 1 second. What we're doing is very simple. We're standing here. We see a mountain over here. We do some basic trig, taking our distance and the elevation of the mountain to derive what the angle would be to produce this. This is a raw planar trigonometry calculation. If the mountain is truly at this elevation, then this will block a star at the same exact angle for an observer standing at this distance at a specific time. And so what we do is we go into Stellarium. We go to this mountain peak. We enter our crosshair to this angle, 231. This is what we calculated for our distance relative to this peak. We're in Stellarium on this mountain. We're looking up at 2 degrees 31 arc minutes. We look for stars that line up at that time. And more importantly than anything else that we're doing, we're turning off refraction in Stellarium. Why are we doing that? If we turn off refraction, it refers to the star's quote unquote true geometric position, which is supposed to be the star's position on the first point of Aries, which is the position of the stars on the night sky during the vernal equinox. So we take that as our reference from where they've derived where these stars are supposed to be. Now, if the geometric position of the true position of the star is lined up at 2 degrees 31 arc minutes at a specific time, for an observer on the ground down here, 50.7 kilometers away from this mountain, and the star gets blocked at that exact time based off of its geometric position, then the trigonometric implication of that is that the angle here from the observer to the mountain peak is exactly what that planar elevation predicts, because the globe would predict that the elevation is lower by a function of 8 inches per mile squared. So you would subtract what that would be off the top of this. In this case, it comes out to be about 200 meters. So the elevation of this mountain being 2074, it would be 200 meters lower, it'd be about 1800 something. So that's what we would be looking at. So that would correspond to a different time in which the star gets occluded. So via this geometric implication, we can resolve two things: that the visual field and the spatial field are not the same. They're clearly different. So when you look through a theodolite at something at a distance and it appears smaller, it's not smaller due to Earth curvature. How do we know this? Because we reference the true geometric position of a star and when it would be and when it would intersect with the peak of this mountain, assuming planar geometry. And suddenly, that star is no longer visible, and it corresponds to the time predicted by us rather than what the globe would predict. Because remember, the star has to get lower in the horizon if there's 200 meters missing from this elevation. That's not what's measured. So when people come in and they're like, well, what about refraction? What if one of the big points of contention or whatever from Jesse's questions last week was about, would refraction change the timing of the star occlusion? Yes, it would. That's why we're referencing the position of the true geometric position. We don't care about what you apparently see in the sky and where that lines up, because that's not our prediction. That's not where we perceive it is clearly not where it quote unquote is, right? And we learned that from train tracks converging in the horizon. They look like they're coming together, but they're not. So what if we built an entire, premise in philosophy built on train tracks converging, but they never do, right? So it's the exact same premise. All right, so are there any questions or anything like that before we wrap up?
You're saying the main point of contention was, and I heard him say that a lot too. That was a popular talking point from their side was, why are you putting the observer where they're not?
Mhm.
And celestial navigation is like based on this multiple, putting you where you're
Bro.
not, putting stars where we don't see them. All just
Bro, it only works off of putting the stars where they're not and putting the observer where he's not, so that you know where to move the stars where they're not supposed where they're not, so that they're where they're quote I'm using air quotes supposed to be relative to the position that you're not. How
Yeah, it checks
insane
out.
is that? How insane is that, dude? So anyway, the point of the long story short, right? Every coordinate system, every projection, the globe projection, AE projection, the offset 90-degree azimuthal concave or bipolar dual model, all these things that are using the same lat long are all based off of using a system that requires you to move the observer where he isn't to use it. So that's not that using, to quote Copernicus here, right? And as far as the hypothesis goes in terms of circular orbits or elliptical, let it go, or let no one expect anything in the way of certainty from astronomy, since astronomy can offer nothing certain, lest if anyone take as true which has been constructed for another use, he will go away from this discipline a bigger fool than when he came into it. Farewell. So if you're looking at positions of stars in the sky,
What quote?
that's from
Who was that?
Copernicus. So the full
Wow, that's
context of that,
intense.
dude, the full context of this quote, right? Because the church was hella pissed at him for saying that the Earth moves. Well, he was like, "Look, bro, don't freak out. Astronomers will use anything necessary to calculate celestial mechanics. We don't care why or how. We could never know anyway. All we care is, does our math work and does it make the prediction?" In terms of physical mechanism, right? They were all like circular orbits, and then they came up. Then Kepler came along and was like, "Actually, they deviate from a circle. Oh, by how much? It's like 1.5%. It's not like over that. Like who? It's not a real thing. Who cares?" And then Einstein came along and was like, "Guess what, boys? Actually, everything's moving in a straight line through curved spacetime. So the orbits are also straight. They're circles and they're ellipses, depending on what kind of math you want to use to describe them." So none of this. So what his takeaway is, and my takeaway is that if you're using the apparent position of celestial bodies to derive your model and make all these assertions about the ground we're standing on, based on your calculations to assert, quote unquote predictions of the cyclical nature of the sky, that's a great apparent model. You live on an apparent globe, right? You live on an apparent concave Earth. You live on an apparent dipole model that's offset 90 degrees from the, or what was it, 40 degrees from the azimuthal one or whatever. None of these things are real. Here's what we know for real, right? The astronomers tell us that there's a precession of the equinox due to the Earth wobulating. Yet we have basically unlimited ancient structures all over the Earth that line up with the equinoxes and solstices every year to the T. That's not possible if there's a precession. They would be off if the Earth was the cause of it. So what this shows big time right here, especially this one, where the sun passes through this building on the equinox every year. It literally goes down, starts in this window, goes down to this one, right, all in a row every year since this thing has been built, since the equinox has been precessing. What this means, right? Because if you're just looking at the stars and all this stuff, that's kinematics. It's empirical measurement. That's kinematics applies. We could be moving. The stars could also be moving. There could be we could be moving a little bit. The sun could move a little bit, and the stars could be all partaking in the motion, right? But what this geometric structure shows us is that the Earth is not partaking in celestial motion. the sun and the stars are moving with respect to one another. And the precession is the stars with respect to the position of the sun, because the sun is aligning with this structure every year. So the only way for there to be a quote unquote precession is if the stars are moving. If that's what's precessing, not
How,
the
how
Earth.
can the stars precess and not the sun if both are caused by the motion of the Earth?
Indubitably, that is
Okay.
that is the crux of it. And this is called, so there's a whole field of study of this. This is called archaeoastronomical, it's archaeoastronomical. So it's basically
Archaeoastronomy?
Yeah, archaeoastronomy. Thank you. That's the word. That's the word I'm looking for. Archaeoastronomy. They are building, structures on Earth, terrestrial structures, and they're intersecting with celestial structures. And this is the only way we can tell anything about motion of the Earth and shape. So if you just use observation alone, nothing can be known for sure, because you could just make up the difference in correction factors, which is what the Globe has done.
Question,
Now,
sir.
Go ahead.
How much is the equinoxial, like zenith point or whatever, supposed to precess each year?
Ooh, good
Fair number.
question. I want to say 14 arc seconds a year, or like 20 or
14
something like that. It's
arc seconds a year?
No, yes.
So like an arc
So
minute every 4 years?
Yes, by the time some of these were made, the sun would be like 10, 20 degrees off. Like none of these would line up. Like this one with this in Mexico with the shadows on the steps. This was supposedly built like 5 or 6,000 years ago. So we got 6,000 years of precession. This happens every year, like a clock, right? So yeah, so only by mixing these two things can we tell anything about shape and motion, right?
It's
So
50.3.
Oh, 50.3. Thank you. Yeah. So like basically every 2 years you get an entire arc minute of deviation, and then so every 60 years that's a degree. So
Yeah, every 6 years is 5 arc minutes.
Yeah, will be a little more, from what I said. But anyway, so now that we're doing so in the same respect with the geometric lining up and every year, right? We have the stars being occluded by a physical structure. Now let me see if I have that video from Taylor, where we have a refracted image.
Bro, that would be a degree every 72 years.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's what they say. Yeah, that's the argument.
Dude, 1 degree. Doesn't that mean that like the point in the sky that you see the sun at zenith should change?
Yes, unless we're stationary and the sky is moving and the sun is moving and the stars are precessing.
Well, I think the argument is
the ones precessing.
The stars obey the wobble because they need them to, but the sun doesn't because they don't. Am I getting it?
Yeah, well, that's actually super unacceptable now, because now we've introduced a building. We've introduced terrestrial structures that have been built for hundreds and thousands of years.
To show the other doesn't do anything.
Yeah. So that argument's now over. So if anyone is using a model that has a graticule on it, if you guys see a Latium longitude on it, I own that model now. I own it. They're not using a model that uses any geometric structures on Earth that intersect with the stars to determine anything about the nature of what they're seeing.
But Alan, doesn't that mean that all these structures were built at varying times and places throughout different generations so that they would specifically align with the equinox at those slots in the buildings in our generation?
Ooh. Dude, so check this out, my boy. Not only would they have built it in their time where it wouldn't have lined up, right? They built it in hopes that like in future generations it'll line up in a time when they're not even around. That's what would have to be asserted. Is that each one?
Well, they all line up today.
I know. So that means that the sun is doing the same thing it's always done every year, forever. And the stars are doing the same thing they've done every year, forever. And
we're sitting still.
Earth is just stationary AF, just chilling.
I mean, you'd have to literally, in order to argue their position, you'd have to say that, the pyramids or the temples built in 2000 BC and 1000 BC and 500 AD and 1200 AD were all built so that their equinoxial, cross points in the lineup of the building would all intersect in our generation. So they would have all been off by varying amounts at different points in time, but during our generation, they just all happen to line up.
Yes.
Interesting. That's pretty GG. I mean, that's crazy.
Yes. Yep. So, what have we learned today? That if you just look in the sky and tell people that you have a model that explains not only why the bodies move, but why you can't see them, i.e., Earth curve, and you've just done nothing but observe the celestial body, your model tells us nothing, without assumption and a hardcore religious belief in it. If you want to substantiate your model, you will need to build a structure or use a structure, mountain or man-made, that intersects with this celestial phenomenon, and we'll go from the predictions from there. Until then, the Earth is flat, planar. It's coplanar with the sky, actually. as modeled out by our boys doing celestial navigation, who are using a sphere of the celestial sphere, by the way, is a sphere of infinite radius, so it's flat, right? It's coplanar with what we see as far as we can see in the visible horizon, which by the way, the visible horizon consists of the celestial horizon, the visible horizon, and the geoidal horizon. So what you see on the ground, right? The old geoid might be lifting up a little bit to give you the visible horizon because of refraction, but that's your horizon. And the celestial horizon is what you see in the sky, all the stars, all the way to the equator. And those are coplanar in their how they're doing this. Fantastic. So it turns out that they are actually coplanar. How do I know that? Did I just watch the stars and baselessly assert it? No, I'm not a fool. I used the inclusion timing of a mountain peak. So that's the significance and the power of what's being put forward here. No one else has asserted this. No one else has put this forward in terms of like the baseline for their cosmology. All people will say, well, the Earth measures flat with respect to what? That's empty rhetoric. The Earth measures curve with respect to what? It's empty rhetoric. It all measures with respect to the stars, right? But the apparent positions are the models that have been given to us, which can't tell us anything. It can't tell us why the stars disappear, and it can't tell us why they're moving. Why all the ancient cultures that built these structures, we've all seen that meme that they're all geocentric flat earthers, right? Why? Well, because they built structures that intersected with the sky that made the same shadows appear for as long as they were built, for as long as their civilizations existed. When they didn't see a star anymore or a celestial body, they didn't go, "Oh, I bet it's underneath me." That's so crazy that we've gotten to this point in time where that's the default position. I can't see a celestial body; it must be under me. That's sickening. Just because you watched it, yikes, dude. You just watch things and draw conclusions now. What's up,
Allen? What's your name, Alex? Didn't this get debunked 2,500 years ago by Theosthenes?
Oh, who's Theosthenes?
Or Theosthenes' cousin, I heard. Yeah.
It was an awesome presentation, man.
Yeah, we're gonna, and then so tomorrow, and then obviously I'll redo it again here in other places. Tomorrow I'm going over the whole history of all this. So starting with like, oh, we saw these stars move. There must be we measured aberration. The Earth must be moving. We measured the nutation. The Earth must be wobbling. Bro, what are you all talking about? We have geometric structures that are aligned to the same positions of the sun for thousands of years. So we'll be going over the entire history of that, and then we're going over some light stuff, how light works, and how it applies to their astronomical, like the merger of astronomy and physics. And then we get into, state-sponsored science and cosmology back in 1777, when the King of England made a decree that everyone was going to use this latitude and longitude system dictated by his astronomers, and they were going to use his observatories that they had been funding. So everything, why is everything tied to Greenwich or Greenwich? Well, because of a royal decree, because all the astronomers were building a coordinate system to use that, because all the amalgamation of all this transformations and moving into the stars where they're not, all needs to be, now that all the work is done, we need to force people to use it. So we're going to find them for using any other terms of independent navigation, or if they're using quote unquote bootleg almanacs, they're gonna cop a fine. All right, any questions?
That's like if MapQuest was just like, you can only use our website for directions, or we'll fine you, and you can't use a printer.
Well, that's exactly what happened. And then so imagine MapQuest tried to use a different map. The king would be like, "Yo, you're not allowed to do that. What are you doing, MapQuest?
What are you doing, dude?
You're about to get fined. You got to use our graticule."
Wait, how much was it? I just looked at it.
Oh, so for the fine for using bootleg stuff or non-licensed stuff by the commissioners of longitudes, $20.
$20 back then.
These on the right, yeah, which was insane. And then these on the right are rewards for accuracy of finding your longitude at sea using their coordinate system. And then so the timing and corrections and basically everything that you were employing, you had to. Well, no, you had to. You're basically competing against an unannounced standard. Well, it's in the decree. Basically, everything that you're putting forward to give this accuracy has to capitulate to an unannounced terms, which is basically, has to be compatible with our model. And you can't do anything that's going to make us look retarded, So I guess what they came up with was transforming to the center of the Earth and doing parallax curling and all this stuff or whatever. So that's what it seems to be.
Well,
Yeah, so if you could find the accuracy within half a degree, they would give you $10,000, which would be like, millions of dollars back then. All right. Well, that's everything for the celestial theodolite update. Mike's been super busy with the dog rescue still, so he hasn't been able to get any more observations. I think the weather cleared up at Jesse's, so he will probably have a celestial theodolite measurement soon. So maybe we can get maybe we can get to the bottom of the simulator or whatever with the apparent positions. But again, I mean, he's using celestial refraction, so he's not even doing our hypothesis. He's not even we're not even speaking the same language, dude. But all right, that's the update, lads and ladettes. If there's no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn the stream down here.
Alan, before you go,
Yo.
Taylor posted a video of a knife in some water with a laser beam. Did you involving refraction? Did you see that?
Yes, I did. I was actually looking for that to play it, and I couldn't find it.
I think
I'm downloading it again. I got it.
Okay, yeah, because
we're about to watch
when I saw that, that just made the most sense to me about what is going on with this celestial theodolite. So, did you talk about that? I came in really late, so
I touched on it briefly. I was going to pull up the video, and then I couldn't find it immediately, so I forgot. So I'm glad that you brought it up because it's actually super pivotal. Because some people will say, "Oh, but what about can't the refracted mountain block it?" No, it has to be a physical geometric structure in that location. So we have Taylor here in the field in her kitchen with a cup of water, a laser pointer, a knife. A knife's going to serve as our physical object. She puts the laser pointer on the where it's at, where the object physically is in the cup, and it blocks the laser. When she moves it to where the apparent image is, it doesn't block it at all. So we'll let this play out. So you see that? Blocked, right? Physical object, not blocked. The apparent object cannot block it, guys.
Meaning, so what I'm gathering is that like a refracted object. So if the mountain was being refracted, it would not block the light of the star that is in view. Correct? That's what this implies. Okay.
Correct. You're looking at this through the same optical corridor. So they're either both refracted and then intersected with the true position and they're no longer visible, or that's it.
Right.
Or it's not intersected with a physical object. That's it. So that is the significance of it. I can't tell you definitively, what the shape of the Earth is, but I can tell you based on these measurements that it's not a globe and that it's not concaving, and that the celestial bodies don't set into the ground.
Oh, Alan.
Up, G.
I enjoyed listening from the YouTubes, and I had a thought. It's kind of wild in this whole debacle that we're in, flat versus globe, the argument. Because like a couple years ago, let's say 3 years ago when I first entered in, there were arguments going back and forth, dismantled and handed to them. And now with this, it's getting to the point that with the measurements and with logic and reason, they just have to ignore these findings and just keep believing in the globe and fighting for the globe, even though they're going to act like this doesn't exist.
Yeah, or they'll revert back and say like something like 24-hour sun, and it's like, bro, the entire model, like the entire thing, right, is derived off of single zenith measurements of stars, right, and the position of where the stars are going to be in a cycle, right. So when you're in the north, you see the sun arcing around you. When that same person goes to the south, he sees it antarc, right? You don't see them simultaneously together at the same time. Each one is individual to you. So it's a function of where you're at on the ground, right? Whether you're going to see an arc or antarc. And this is so that if you were to follow the sun, you would follow it back to the equator. This makes it so that you are always in the center of creation. The sun always goes around you. You don't go around the sun. The previous cosmological interpretations of how to argue flat Earth through the rhetoric of the AE projection solely, right, is not a valid use of what the AE map is. It doesn't represent where we live in that way. It's a snapshot of the stars and the position of sunlight during the summer and winter solstice. So it doesn't tell us anything about the shape, right? It just tells us where sunlight's going to be and where the stars were on the vernal equinox. So it's really important to understand that the merger of these two things in the form of a coordinate system, one person only use one half of the coordinate system at a time, right? So where the stars aren't, you don't care about. You know where they're going to be because it's a cycle. You'll see them back in your horizon again. But when they're not there, you don't care. Doesn't matter if they're beneath your feet or if they've disappeared, if they went through a magical portal, doesn't matter.
Man, that's also dope. I mean, I was just imagining every single human on the plane. They have a limit to their vision, 360 around them. They have how far the horizon is or how far they can see. And all of us humans have intersecting limits of vision, but none of them tilt away. They don't ever change angles. We're all walking around with our heads going up in the same direction. You don't have somebody 4,000 miles away with an azimuthal grid of vision at a crazy side angle. Doesn't work like that.
Right.
So thanks for
Well,
all
yeah,
your hard work, man.
Yeah, no worries, man. Well, you know what's funny about that, right? Is like your dome of vision creates the arcing of things in the sky, right? So like on the ball, right? They always show you like the sideways view of the position of the sun, and then like the observer at the equator. And it's like they're looking like sideways is like they're up, but it's like that would be they're up for everyone because they're just viewing it through a literal dome. So the arc isn't created by the contour of the Earth. It's just your ASI dome. They really did a nice ruse on everyone. It's been well played, but that's over now.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome learning from you guys. Keep up the good work. Thanks for the update. And much love to everybody that hasn't been scared to look into things. Many things need to be looked into in this world we're living in. So keep doing it, guys.
Absolutely. The Earth lies perpendicular to an electric field. How dare you, Zach? How dare you?
Man, I love that wobble. Like they needed to invoke it to explain the stars and
Oh,
how they're
dude.
not actually there, but it doesn't work for the sun, even though everything in the sky is caused by the same motion. I have it
Dude.
coming and going.
Dude, the wobble just buried them so hard
Nice.
with the dude, this building. Let's just play this out for a second. Let's watch your boy the sunset real quick.
Can you pronounce the name of this building, Alan?
Yeah, it's the
It's got an A in it, I think. You're saying that at the different times of year, the sun processes to a different hole?
No, I'm saying on this day it's gonna hit all of these bad boys. On the equinox.
Right.
We're watching it right now. It's gonna set through all of these. Well, but we're wobbling at 72. What was it? 1 degree every 72 years or whatever. What was it?
So is that in contradiction with what the Globe model predicts?
I wonder if it's going to come back next year, and then the year after that, and the year after that, and so on and so forth.
But it happens at a slightly different time.
Or do we just are these lucky?
We just change the calendars and stuff, or what?
Ooh, so great question. So the calendars, since the Gregorian calendar came out, you know how some of the celestial events and stuff occur on different days or whatever. The equinoxes are always on the same day. They should have drifted too, or whatever, by now.
Yeah, that's why we have leap years and shit, right? To keep the sun in sync with our calendar.
It's like March 21st or something like that, and then September 22nd, I think, something like that.
Solar calendars align with the seasons, lunar calendars align with the moon, and then lunar solar calendars do the offset and do leap months in the middle to get both. But yeah, eventually that's all there to say, well, if it doesn't happen at the same time every year, what if we change what time it is and it doesn't happen? Can we have our model now?
Yeah. I think it's really cool that the people that built this temple didn't get to see any of the cool celestial alignments when they built it. And it wasn't until thousands of years later of procession that these lads and ladettes get to reap the benefits. Shout out to the Indians. That's super dope that they did that. Oh, wait, never mind.
There's a bunch of those, though.
I'm wrong. They actually built it, and they could reap the benefits immediately. It's never changed. My bad. I was mistaken. Oops.
What's the precision of the hole, though, Alan? How many degrees variation can you get through that hole? It's not a very precise instrument, right? It's just a...
Hey, quick little video from NASA here showing what the precession looks like from different frames. So if the Earth were stationary and we had a topographical view of the sky rotating over top of us, we'll see the one on the left, and the two on the right are the same thing, like a God's eye view of the rotating ball precessing. Oh, no way. They're the same. How do we know which one is correct, boys? How can we tell? Should we endlessly argue over the position of celestial bodies throughout the year? Venus transits, perhaps? Mars, even? No. Nope, that sounds retarded. I'm just going to look at a building. Oh, look, it's the same. We figured it out. It's the one on the left is correct. That's it.
There are other buildings, though, that have the sun aligning on solstice and equinox that also would be out of alignment if that was the case.
There's tons. There's this one in Chiquillo, right? So you see these 13 stones here. They line up on the equinoxes and solstices all throughout the year. You can measure the sun. You basically can tell what day you're in within a couple of days of accuracy, like 2 to 3 days accuracy, just based off of where the sun appears throughout the year on these stones where you're standing here. There's a nice video from our boy Brian Cox that we're going to watch tomorrow where he breaks it down for us. Shout out to Brian Cox. But yeah, so we got the solstice. It lines up here. June solstice over here, or winter over here. June over here. All in between to mark out the other.
Right.
And the Globe model fails to predict these things, I assume.
Well, what we were
and like you were saying, this isn't the only one. There was so many that it was overwhelming to like pick which ones to add. There's too many. So if you go to Wikipedia and just type in archaeoastronomy, this is a whole field of study. You can we can go to.
As is claiming that this is supported by the Globe model, but I think you missed the part where we were differentiating where the stars wobble and the axis changes therein would also have to apply to the sun, since they're both in the sky and both caused by uniform rotating Earth. Now, we're marveling how that's not the case for the sun, thus is not the case for the stars.
Yeah, I got that guy muted because he never really says anything. He just kind of like shows up and just says stuff.
You get very upset by what I say.
But anyway,
that's your problem.
But yeah, great contribution or whatever. Thanks. And the cool part about these structures too, the Chinese have them, all the different Mexican cultures, South American cultures have them. There's some in Mexico, Egypt, they're literally all over the world. Everyone was like, you know what we need, boys? You know what we need? You know what we really need, guys? I know we're like living in huts and don't have technology, but do you guys know what we really need? Geometric structures placed that intersect with celestial phenomena so we know what time it is. These were the most important things that people, guys, the guy that built this, if he made the wrong prediction, they kill him. So this measures shadows of the sun on the equinoxes as it gets cast from here onto the ground. I don't have a side view of it, or for a diagram. But what happens is basically, if this guy made the wrong prediction for this, they kill him. They would kill these people. So if you were like, oh yeah, dude, you know what? The Earth's wobulating. That's what my prediction is based off of. No, nobody was doing that. All right. Oh, then we have this cool mountain here where was this at? This was in Chocola. Anyway, this mountain peak here, this like natural geometric structure lines up based on where you're at. I think Eric sent me the observation.
That's kind of crazy.
But dude, look at this. That's insane, right? This mountain peak just lines. It's a sun celestial theodolite essentially. That's insane. But yeah, it lines up every year, same spots.
What's a Tracina?
Never met her.
Year passage, Tracina, winter solstice. I don't know what a Tracina is. 513, 731.
Well, let's look it up. Tracina is a 13-day period using the Colombian Mesoamerican calendars, the 260-day Mayan calendar. Oh, that's right. There was some additional diagrams for this that showed how it related to the 260-day one.
Dude, so that's saying that it aligns with like 7 different calendars then, because this comes summer solstice for the solar calendars, the lunar lads, and then the Mayan.
It lined up with the 260 and the 360 or the 365 or whatever we're using now. You know, dude, it's so crazy, like the history of calendars and all this stuff. Like, and then we just have your boy the sun just hitting your boy Mountain Peak every year consistently, right off the top of the dome. No, I'm not saying that at all, man. I wish you wouldn't talk to me. All right.
Who's that here? I'm gonna go.
Daza. He's like, are you saying things that no, man, I'm not. And that's why I don't talk to you.
Oh, well, the thing that is frustrating is he didn't listen to any of the presentation and then came in to chime in with questions that were definitely counter to the whole point. Like, doesn't the Globe predict this? And it's like, it's almost like you weren't listening at all. Oh, you weren't here at all. And then you came in to like, champion Globe alley-oop or whatever.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yep. But yeah. So anyway, I'll be putting this together tomorrow in a nice formalized Prezi. Might be a bit lengthy, but it is the entire history of celestial navigation, how light works, how all these geometric structures work, and all this stuff. So it'll be nice.
It's gonna be dope tomorrow.
Hey, you posting this on YouTube? So I can check it out later?
Absolutely. It's already on YouTube right now, but it will be on YouTube.
Can you link me your channel, or is it in your profile?
I will link it to you right now, good sir.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I missed so much of it. I was in the middle of cooking.
Nice. Here's you linked it. Thank you, Shane. Much appreciated. And then tomorrow's Prezi Boys will be flat Earth and the 24-hour sun. Where is your model that uses terrestrial structures to intersect celestial phenomenon? If you don't have a model that uses that, I'm not super interested in your apparent model. You have an apparent model. You want to tell me about your apparent model? You guys should prefix everything now with apparent globe, apparent concave, apparent. Why? Why would you do that? Because it's derived off the apparent positions of celestial bodies, which tells us nothing.
You just broke Discord with that last statement.
I mean, think about it. Think about what Copernicus said. So we got Kepler's laws and Newton's laws, right? We got a ratio of pi and periodicity, and we got gravitational potential and mass, right? But algebraically, the mass cancels out, and it just becomes a ratio of periodicity and pi again, because it's GMM over r squared. So we're back to piing it up. We don't have any. We don't know why these things move, but like if you want to describe them as moving due to mass, well, you can have them move in elliptical orbits. You can have them go in circles if you're so bold and daring. You can have them go in a straight line if you're crazy as hell and want to do some tensor calculus and explain to people what a manifold is and how you're taking differentials of said manifold to describe conservation of energy and momentum as a function of space-time curvature to create a structure of bent space-time which bodies move through in a curved linear, guys. It's both of these together. Why they move, nobody knows. Why would we ever let them tell us why we can't see them anymore? If Copernicus doesn't care, I certainly don't care.
One more random comment. When I like drive away from the DFW airport, let's say downtown, DFW area, like downtown Dallas or any major city, when I drive away from it, I don't think, oh man, I can't see the city anymore. It must be over the curve. I've always just thought I left the area and I can't visually see it optically. It's perspective. You can't see forever. It's in your rearview mirror way too far.
Yep. Well, I look forward to some models that use the true geometric position of these bodies to substantiate their claims. That'll be awesome. All right, I think that's all I wanted to cover, really. I think we pretty much hammered it home, guys. So just a quick recap here. We got our boy, the celestial sphere, how we see everything from the horizon to from the ground to the horizon, and then from the sky to the ground, right? And then we have the celestial sphere, which intersects with the equator on Earth. So these two things are the same. Your elevation angle and azimuth, declination, and Greenwich hourly angle are all aspects of the same thing. And they just relate the position of stars to the ground in a way that is best described as coplanar geometry. What's everyone's favorite type of geometry? Mine's coplanar.
Like how you I think you labeled one the terrestrial sphere and one the celestial sphere. I see you're sticking a P-Tals method then. Good old Ptolemy from the back in the day didn't even want to start it until you could accept this two-sphere model, terrestrial and celestial spheres.
Oh man, you know what? I need to put that in the book too, or in the Prezi too, right after Copernicus. There's two important things to understand.
P-Tals.
let nobody expect anything certain from astronomy because they don't know either. And if you want to use the stars to navigate, you have to make use of the terrestrial sphere. Right? Does the terrestrial sphere exist? Couldn't tell you, but the calculations seem to work.
Well, he even says it in his book, like it's two conceptual models. Neither is real, right? There's no actual celestial sphere. There's no actual terrestrial sphere. One is a model built from another. So one conceptual model built from another.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know he wasn't asserting the physicality of the terrestrial as well. That's awesome.
It comes later when people try to make it sound better than it was. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, dude, that's even funnier. That's classic P-Tals, dude. Shout out to the boys. P-Tals. All right, lads, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all for tuning in. There will be another Celestial Theodolite update in between now and in between the next time that there are new measurements. And then, of course, tune into the Prezi tomorrow on Ether Cosmology and my YouTube channel, Shane's YouTube channel. And then I'm gonna, if you miss this one, I'll be doing it again probably on Friday or Saturday over at Omni Talk, and then I'll be doing it on here again. So we'll be running it again, boys. And we'll get some back and forth with some globularists. Hopefully, we'll have some pushback. We'll have some people trying to tell me about their apparent model. Can't wait to hear about it.
I imagine.
Omni Talk, and then I'll be doing it on here again. So we'll be running it again, boys, and we'll get some back and forth with some. Globularist, hopefully. We'll have some pushback. We'll have some people trying to tell me about their apparent model. Can't wait to hear about it.
I imagine the pushback will be like,
hey, Shane, you want to see something cool? Check out what this dude derived off of the apparent position of the sun. He derived an entire ball.
No way.
Yeah, all he had to do was already know the distance between the two places because he already had a coordinate system to derive, to relate sky miles to distances. Otherwise, it would have no physical meaning because what they ended up turning around and doing is saying that the stadia is like 1% to 16% of a terrestrial meridian, depending on which math you use, which just means how much harder did we want to make them agree? So check this out. The range is 0.1, right? So dead accurate, or 16. It's like, we're pretty good. He was either right on dead accurate or pretty good. But either way, it was close enough to the ball. And then therefore we know that there's a ball because now that we have real units of measurement that aren't derived from a ball. Oh, wait a minute. Do we have independent units of measurement? Do we have those? Hold on. I'm checking.
We have graticule units.
Checking my units of measurement. Where are my units? Looking for them. Can't find my units of measurement. Back here. Ooh, here it is. Here we go. Units of measurement. 1 nautical mile.
That's what I was thinking. The nautical mile is like the only one that has an actual measurement, right? It's like the distance you travel for 1 arc minute on the celestial equator. So that is the only thing that has a distance. The only thing that gives that value is the circumference you're going to apply it to. So only the equatorial circumference gives it the actual metric. All the other units in the metric system are just ratios of each other, right? 2.5 centimeters in an inch, 3 feet in a yard. It's all just metrics and ratios of each other. That's the only one that has the actual real world tie-in. That's crazy.
It's insane. Excuse me. Where's my units? Well, anyway. All right, lads. That's it for the Prezi and stuff. I'm going to end the stream now. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. See you guys tomorrow.
So sad I missed it.
Taylor, we featured you in it.
What?
Like a music video or something? Is that
Nobody even invited me.
Yeah, you had a knife out and you were shooting a laser at it.
Oh, good. I'm so happy. Was there any questions after?
Yeah, Mr. actually asked if I was going to play that video or not. So I guess that was before, but there was a question that involved you. I think that counts.
And what was the question?
If I was going to play the video of you shooting a laser at a knife.
Oh, I see. Definitely. Yeah, it's not really up for debate. Refracted objects cannot block light. It's like a hologram. It won't block anything. There has to be a new Heffron method now.
Unlucky.
Yeah, we need to figure out that Heffron method. Whenever we go to the salt flats, we should make sure that we do it outside of that range just to double check if it works or not. Which I'm sure it probably will, but that would just be a good recipe.
Yeah, so it'll work at those ranges. Like getting it to match with celestial refraction doesn't mean anything. Even at any distance, that's completely not the argument. So we shouldn't even entertain that. But I will look at some potential celestial theodolite points or wherever we're going to be.
Did you go over how they derive celestial refraction?
Oh, I sure did.
I'm gonna have to rewatch it. It can't be as bad as how they derive terrestrial refraction, huh?
Oh, it's even worse, dude. So, well, it's kind of the same, right? So for the terrestrial, they just give you coefficient that will make it such that if you square your observer height, it's just going to increase the refraction as a function of that. So like you're always going to be on the ball. And then what they did for celestial was like the same thing, but they started from the very, very center of the ball, extended it out 20 kilometers, and then they have a smooth equidistant or a smooth uniform gradient that surrounds the sphere that will adjust any celestial body to the position that it needs to be if an observer was at the center of the ball looking up and there was no refraction.
We're just going to include our reification radius, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Oh,
like,
and
here's
in
what it
that-
should be.
Sorry,
And
real
here's
quick. And in that, there's two
Oh.
adjustable terms that allow you to adjust your real temperature and pressure relative to your location so that you could feel that you did some oh, it only works on a ball because I entered these two values here. No. The input of the equation was the ball, and the output is most definitely the ball, irrespective of anything you put in. So your involvement in there is kind of like frivolous. Like you showed up. The ball was already there. The ball
My
was already
favorite-
rolled.
Exactly.
My favorite is when they do two instances of ball compared to ball and then declare they've debunked flat Earth.
Yeah. Like whenever I was
Yeah.
like showing Shubil a paper about the temperature gradients and how they'd actually make things appear shorter all the time instead of taller, he's like, well, this paper that you gave me mentions ball, therefore it's a ball. And I'm like,
That's
okay.
the lowest form of
love when they do
argument
that,
you could
yeah.
ever have. That just means that you you can do a shootout and you accidentally hit the button that drops all your ammo out of your gun and all your bullets, and then your gun's just empty.
Yeah.
When you say that, like that's the equivalent of what? Like he pulled out his gun, but there was just super unloaded.
That's how you know they have nothing, right?
Yeah.
The paper mentions it.
No firing pin. Spring wasn't even in the trigger. Safety was welded shut.
Yeah.
Wasn't even in the gun to begin with.
I handed you a paper on Etherwind, and the dude Control F sphericity and found on page 67 he referenced, so therefore debunked. What? You didn't? Wow.
Yeah. That's like baby tier stuff. Like if somebody does that to you, that's like when I just turn their volume to 0. I'm like, you have nothing. You have
Could
no
be asked to
contribution
read a paragraph that I've cited to support my argument, but could be asked to spend 18 minutes Control Fing radius in the same paper. Couldn't have just read it. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's insane.
Well, then we should believe in the ether if Tesla believed in the ether, right?
Well, I don't know, but I'm gonna head off of here, lads. I'm gonna watch some Righteous Gemstones with my mum. You guys have a good evening. Catch you
Thank
on
you,
the
Alex.
breezy.
Have a good one, Alan. Thanks, bud.
Thanks for the presentation, man.
Yep,
Sir,
thanks.
see you guys tomorrow for the absolute destruction of all models that don't include a celestial theodolite. Peace be upon Gleason's rhetoric and globular rhetoric.
Yeah, I can't believe like the refraction coefficients like it's not even like they're measuring reality. Like, hey, here's a gradient. We're going to input all that and figure out the refraction. I don't even know. Like they chose like one standard temperature, like totally neglecting temperature gradients near the surface. And actually, the temperature gradient would be the most important thing to actually calculate the terrestrial refraction. And it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, here's what it needs to be, and here's what it is. Therefore, this is how much refraction. Like that's just stupid.
It's actually the most meaningful value in the whole formula. But even then, it's so small, and a simple Google search will tell you with all the zeros behind it that it's such a small factor, and the Google search will simply tell you that the radius is doing all the heavy lifting. So
Yeah,
it just goes right back to refraction is the curve.
Well, actually, if you can like learn how the refraction works, you can actually like disprove some of these claims that like the seeing too far is from refraction. Because you could say, okay, well, here's the temperature gradient. Like there was no like crazy temperature inversion where you had like some crazy cold front come through. Therefore, if this was the calculation, like the temperature during the day of something like the Mount Canigou, then you can actually look at the temperature and see what the refraction would be. And if the refraction doesn't match up with that, then you can say, well, therefore you can tell that's not from refraction. Like you could see if Mount Canigou stuff is from refraction or not just by looking at temperature.
Right. Yeah, it turns out the H value stands for homogeneous atmosphere. They're taking just like an average, because there's so many layers of temperature gradients that they use the H as a constant for the homogeneous average. Yeah, because it's a lot of area.
Yeah, I was talking to Ruhiv last night about refraction, and he was talking about how, like I was talking about how things can disappear bottom up due to refraction, like from the, like the apparent sinking boats or whatever. And then he was like, oh no, there would need to be like some type of mirage. And he was saying like in all cases of that refraction, you need to have some sort of mirage. And I'm like, Okay, first of all, there's many replications that you can even do with this. Like Skyfree did a video where they had these like buttons on the ground, the camera on the ground looking at them, and then they opened the door and just saw that they merged with the floor and completely disappeared. And then also, the Skunk Bay time lapse, you could just see things like starting to merge with the horizon without seeing any mirroring or anything, any crazy thing like that. Things just start to actually just disappear. And you can see how it gets all loopy throughout the day. But, I didn't see anything that appeared that wasn't already there, but I did see things sink and appear to, merge with the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to have like some like thing where you're like, things are lifted up in perfect proportion. You first of all need to have like something that goes against like the normal temperature gradient, right? Because normally it's hotter on the ground and it gets colder as you go up in elevation. This will make
That's
things
right.
like appear to drop over distance. Like it would appear to like sink into the ground, especially where those heavy gradients are near the surface. And we should expect that to happen just based on basic principles of refraction. But on top of that, to have something like be like lifted up, like especially to any sort of significant extent, you'd have to have like a colder level of air underneath a warmer level, which is abnormal. So then the to say like that these things of seeing too far are actually just refraction, like you can easily disprove that just by looking at the weather that day. If it's basic normal weather where it gets hotter at the ground, colder up, then it wouldn't be that.
Yeah, no, they're not going to look at any of the variables. They're just going to pull the refraction card. And that's what's so great about this is that we're going to burn the refraction card, and they won't be able to bust it out like they
and then
have.
to have like Mount Canigou repeatable, like if you could see it 2 times a year every year, and you're going to say like on these particular days there was a crazy cold front or something, like you could easily
Right. Without proving that, just say refraction. That just felt creepy every time they do that. How could you say refraction every time, 365 times a year, days a year? How could you willy-nilly just say, oh, well, the conditions were just perfect. Always. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, you have to have a crazy cold front where the ground is colder than the air above it, which is not usually the case.
Right. Yeah.
Dude, Skyfree literally modeled, like, Ruhip's favorite thing to bring up was this toy boat that we were talking about last night on Another Space. And basically, the toy boat, like Skyfree's literally put a boat. He had a toy boat, right? And he was showing it over his pond, and he was near the surface and showed that as the boat was moving away, it appeared to disappear bottom up in a pond, like in a small pond, and like just to show like this is not because it's going behind some curve.
That's cool. Cool. Yeah, the evidence is piling up. And
you're right. Yeah, I might have to rewatch the video, but if y'all heard like the last celestial theodolite presentation, basically, you had to have like Jesse's rebuttal was like that, you input these numbers, right? You have like terrestrial refraction, celestial refraction at these certain value, at these certain distances, this is what you'd expect. But my contention with that is like refracted objects don't block light. And that's why I tried to do that knife experiment to, see if the laser would go through the, refracted or magnified knife, and it did. And then like once it was behind the actual knife, like it wasn't able to go through. It blocked the laser.
yeah, that was a killer visual.
Yo, did Alan just roll the outro and roll out? I think I missed that last part.
Yeah, he had to bounce.
All right. Word.